live in a second. I think this will be quite small. Small but beautiful. Okay. It's just doing it, and then should I just let everybody in now?
Yeah.
Might as well. Yeah, here we go. It's streaming. Okay, admit all. Right. Hopefully we're all being let in now. I'm going to try and turn off that weird sound. Where is payment? Welcome everyone.
Hello all. I'll give it a couple of minutes just to let people get in, because I know everyone's been busy at conference week and coming in and out of various events. I think all of us have just stepped off one event straight into another event and then into this event ourselves on the top bit. So we'll give it a couple of minutes if we can. Just to make everybody aware, and you can probably see in the top left of your screen, it just say we're live. We're just streaming bits out on the first part of the meeting before we come to questions, which is the presentation, so members of the society can see what we're doing as well. But it's not broadcast massively publicly or anything, so just to reassure you all.
I'm quite excited by the chap with the Gibson SG on the wall there.
Yeah, I won't be doing any performances. Sorry.
I'm gone.
That was. We were going to tell you, Craig, later on. It was up to you to do a rendition of classic Union hymns for us at the end of the meeting.
I would love to see that.
We could break out our tin whistles, Hannah. Me and Hannah are both learning the tin whistle.
Do you both play the whistle?
Lockdown hobby.
Amazing.
I mean, play is a strong word for me. I can do about 4 notes.
Do you know the Kesh?
No, the
Kesh jig?
No, I've not got that far yet, Kevin.
Anyway, on that note, campaigning and how to use a tin whistle to convince voters to turn out on the day. Welcome everybody. My name's Nathan. I'm one of the founders with the Labour Society of Campaigners, alongside Hannah, Jane and Kevin on the call, and we've got another colleague, Liz, who's joining us in a bit. We're all from differing backgrounds in terms of campaign experience. My background's as a trade union organiser. Hannah's director with Labour Together. Jane is a chair of Roxburgh CLP and a community organiser. Kevin runs Labour Party graphic designers and is unsurprisingly, therefore, very skilled at graphic design. And Liz is an expert in rural campaigning. So just give you an idea of what the society is. We were founded, sounds like a posh word. We launched in December last year, so we're very new on the ground. But with the aim of just spreading best practice about campaigning and to try and provide resources to people that want to campaign for the Labour Party, alongside embedding testing. So we've got some bits that we'll talk to you today about ways to test new campaign practices across various areas, and also to spread best practice in a non-factional manner. So as I always say at the start of things, we just don't do policy. We only talk about campaigning because it's an important area that often isn't focused on enough. So it's solely about that. So Hannah, over to you first for a little presentation, I understand.
Yep. Cool. Let me just grab my slides. Slightly concerningly, I just added in a final slide about testing to remind me to tell you guys that we had an interesting session on that recently. So 1 second, I'm just sharing my screen. Cool. Okay. Click present. Okay. So this is basically some local election experiments / stuff we can do. And Richard, who I think is on the call, has done amazing experiments and election stuff. So it'd be good to kind of chat to you later about this as well. So what are some like immediate things that you can make use of running into the kind of local elections? So one of the things that we're kind of looking at is making the most of your data. So do you sort of know who you need to turn out? Do you know who you need to convince? Like, have you got a sense of like who are your reliable Labour voters, who are the people you need to kind of persuade? And basically the party has quite a lot of this data on something called Insights and Contact Creator. So it's worth sort of like really digging into that and seeing who it is that you really need to target. The other thing that would be good to kind of test and start to play around with is thinking about how can you tailor your messages for different groups. So there's a lot of strong research on things like psychographics and understanding how messaging can resonate with different groups of people. And actually, if you dig far enough into Contact Creator, there's something called super mosaic groups, which are 1, 2, and 3, which are based around kind of people's value sets. So for example, I can't remember which way around the numbers are, but 1's going to be a value set that's more traditional, will respond to kind of different messaging to people with a value set that might be more kind of idealistic or kind of more concerned about different kind of issues or campaigning. So it's really worth kind of digging into some of the stuff that the party has given you around sort of these different groups. And again, also on Insight, you'll find different groups of the electorate have different kind of issue salience figures. So you can find out what issues almost kind of speak to different groups. So it's definitely worth making the most of your data. Sorry, there's going to be a mixture of sort of innovation and then like things that we've sort of picked up by talking to people. The next thing is obviously make it the most of the channels that you have. So right now we're in a really difficult time where we can't door knock. That's the thing that we normally do. And that's really, really difficult. So try to make the best DMs and leaflets you possibly can, because this is one of your main channels to talk directly to households and the electorate. So if you're making a leaflet, make sure it looks good. Again, like Liz and Kevin will know much more about this. Kevin's a designer, so he'll be able to give you lots of great tips on that. But we're also looking into like how we might be able to make editable templates. Liz Pole, who'll be on the call later, has this idea of like, can you crowdsource photos of areas in your locality and make sure they're really high quality in your leaflet. So this slide is basically saying, if we're going to kind of do DMs and leaflets, let's make the most of it. And then again, sort of, you know, press release templates. Local media is probably another way that you can get your message out. So where we can, like, can we share templates across each other? Can we share kind of guides to getting something in the local paper? Is that something we as a society can do? Because again, this is something that kind of is an ideal channel for us to be using. I'm just going to let some people into the session who are in the waiting room. Sorry, I'm trying to keep an eye on a few things. Phone banking is another area that we've kind of identified as a possible innovation. Can you make more highly localized scripts? Is there a possibility that you can do sort of briefing on local issues with the volunteers before they start phone banking? We've been playing around a little bit with different kinds of scripts and just thinking about how can you make it kind of hyper local and really give people the information they need. Another thing is looking at postal votes. So they're going to be really key in this election. So one of the innovations that we're thinking of testing, and if you'd like to get involved, please just get in touch, is this idea that can you send people who have voted for you before, who you know from the marked register have voted in the last election and are Labour supporters, can you send them a letter saying thank you for voting? We're really keen that you don't miss out a chance to vote again. Because we care about, you know, your vote and we really value your vote and thank you for it. Here's how you sign up for a postal vote. So this idea of just referencing a voter's previous behaviour to kind of ask them to make sure that they kind of sign up for a postal vote and can vote again. So that's something that we're thinking of testing. If you're interested in testing that too, get in touch. Also this idea of like early voting, so making a pitch to do early voting and breaking down your messaging by group. So what works for kind of an older person who might be nervous about coronavirus will be different to say a message you might give to a family who are maybe really busy. So think about the type of voter that you're contacting and think about what message might land best in terms of why they should sign up for an early vote. So for some people, it might be time saving. For other people, it might be convenience thing. For others, it'll be because they're nervous and worried about kind of coronavirus. But like really think about what message is going to land with different groups. Social pressure / relational organizing. So social pressure is basically the psychology you use around things like FOMO. It's the idea of fear of missing out or people feeling like, oh, everybody else is doing this, so I should do it. And it's really powerful, actually. So one of the things that we're looking at is whether, and in fact, I think Richard has actually used this in his elections, but we're really keen to test whether it has an impact, is this idea of if you tell a street, you're a really good street for turning out and voting, like 80% of your street votes, is that a way to sort of induce some sort of social pressure and be like, oh, I better not let down the street, I should vote too. So this idea of kind of like creating that pressure is really important. So that's something we're interested in testing, whether somebody getting a letter saying that would make them more or less likely to vote. So if you're interested in that, get in touch. Also, there's an interesting thing going on in the States called postcarding, which one of our society members, Claire, who has done a lot of campaigning in the States, sort of flagged up. This is the idea that can you like encourage your members to send postcards to people, voters, encouraging them to vote with like a friendly message. It's worked really well in the States and they've really got that going. So it's something you might want to do because again, we're just thinking about creative ways to reach voters. And then this other thing is around texting and peer-to-peer. So you're much more likely to do something if your friend tells you to do it. So is there a way that we can use networks and social relationships within the membership of the Labour Party to start kind of creating that kind of social pressure of you should go and vote? So could you kind of ask each member to text 5 friends? Is there a way you can make that fun? Is there kind of a good message you could kind of share? Can you make messages that are easy to kind of forward on WhatsApp and ask people to do that? Is there something creative you can do around that? The final bit is really utilizing online channels to reach voters. So again, this is really some of this is kind of new, some of this isn't new, some of these are just things that we've thought of and other people have thought of, but kind of presenting to you as options. But obviously you'll have kind of Facebook ads, and it's really worth getting to grips with the promote system, because that allows you to again look at how do you target different ads to different audiences. And if you back up that with different messages based on the psychographics of the different mosaic groups, or even based on different issues related to the stuff you get from Insight, you could get some really powerful Facebook ads out there. So if you're going to spend money, I definitely recommend making sure that your Facebook ads are targeted, messaged, and also kind of really a lot of thought is put into them. Again, also when you're crafting Facebook ads, try and think about what the images you're using mean. This is another thing, like images aren't just kind of stock images of this thing, they also convey emotion. So really think through like what is the best image I could use and what's the best message I could use in your Facebook ads. The other thing that we were looking into, and this was an idea that came up by David, who's also in our group, and he runs Labour Beyond Cities, was this idea of hyperlocal WhatsApp groups. So most council elections can be won on a margin of like a couple of hundred votes. So is there a way that you could set up campaigning local WhatsApp groups in your area around issues or campaigns that people care about? So could you sort of like put a link in a Facebook group or in an ad saying, are you fed up of the litter in this park? Join this group to do something about it. And then you get people into a group, and then you can start to organize them around like taking action, either to start doing kind of socially distanced litter picking in the park. But the idea is that you're opening up a direct channel with the voters on quite a small scale. So this is maybe a creative way to start to engage people when we can't door knock or we can't go along to a kind of community group in person. But can you create issues and campaigns where you're creating that kind of link to people? Then the final bit, which I'm going to kind of go into a little bit more detail because Campaign Lab has done a little bit of work on this, is around Facebook group campaigning. So this is just like a couple of really simple steps that you could do. But local Facebook groups are becoming quite important community spaces, and they're a place that you can learn a lot from. So here's a really quick like step-by-step guide to what you could do in your local Facebook group. So step 1, you can find and join your local Facebook group. Again, all you do is you search for where you live. It's worth thinking about geography. Facebook groups will tend to be around sort of like towns rather than necessarily constituencies or ward boundaries. So it's worth playing around with a few different kind of names for this. It's worth looking at the number of posts per day in a Facebook group. So you can see that this top group is more active than the bottom group. So you can get a sense of engagement, and also avoid buy and sell groups because people don't post about politics on those. So don't try and kind of force politics into a forum that doesn't have it. Step 2 is listening. So like these are really good forums to find out, in the absence of door knocking, what different local issues are coming out up? What sort of what does the local community care about? What are people proud of? What are they complaining about? And also kind of what do people think about Labour in their area? What's being positively received, what's being negatively received, and also try to identify common issues and patterns. This is something you could actually get kind of 10 or 12 members to do if they all join different groups. It's quite a good distributed organising task while people aren't door knocking. This is another thing that they can do. Start a conversation. So the next step is probably to start commenting on other people's posts. That's a good way to like establish a good reputation within a community space. So, you know, you might disagree with something, but the goal isn't to win an argument online. It's to understand, listen, and also demonstrate that Labour's listening kind of more broadly. You can also help people out. So if somebody puts a question, you can answer it. You can share a local news piece. You could share some content from, you know, a local representative. Liz, who'll be on the call later in Devon, she shares a lot of kind of what she does. She goes along to kind of local council public question and answer sessions, and then she asks about an issue that she's identified in a local Facebook group, and then records her asking it on Zoom and then reposts it in the Facebook group. So it's a really direct kind of correlation between I've listened to this being an issue, I've then asked about it, and then I've recorded that I've asked about it. Because sometimes even just saying the name of a local place is really important. And then also things like start a survey. So Jane from Broxtowe, who's here on the call, has done a bit of kind of work on this, which is like posting surveys into local groups to really get a sense of what issues are coming up. And stage 4 is like making change happen. So you're not just doing this to kind of campaign, you're also doing it to actually try and make change. So things like you can organize an action and share when it's done. So say you realize that an issue is around the litter picking, and as a councillor, you've gone away and done that action, you can then share that we're taking this action on behalf of what you've, it's a really important feedback loop. Somebody complains about something, you then post back saying you've done something, and quite important. Also, you could create a community event or discussion and then advertise it there, do petitions. You could decide to become an admin or moderator of your local Facebook group, and also use these forums to identify good local candidates. You might see that there's somebody who's like constantly posting and acting and is like a really strong community voice. So you might want to bring them on. So finally on testing, which I just added there, the other month, our last kind of Labour Society of Campaigners event, we had a recording of Will, who's from the Analyst Institute, who basically goes through how to do A/B testing, which is a way to test interventions that you're doing. If you're interested in campaign innovation, I highly recommend you check it out. I'll post it in the chat so you can kind of see it. It's just a video and it just runs through like how you do this kind of innovation. But that's basically some stuff that we're thinking about, but we want to listen to you and find out what you want to do. And I'm going to hand over to the next speaker. I'll stop sharing. There we go.
Well, just quickly on that to say, with the Analyst Institute who we worked with, I think we've got an arrangement with them that if you become a member of the society, you can join up as a member of the Analyst Institute in America, where normally you have to have a reference through from that organisation. And I think, I mean, I don't know, but I think we're the only people doing it in our bit of the movement and such. I don't know of anybody else doing it. I'll have to fact check that. But yeah, it's a perk of membership, because if I'm not doing upselling, as somebody else already noticed on chat, then I'm not doing my job properly. The next speaker is Jane from Broxtowe, who was referenced throughout all of that. So over to you, Jane.
Hello, yes, hello everyone on there. Hello, Val, one of our candidates there. Hello, and some of the others I know, Craig and Dora. Hello, everyone. And Liz from Gedlin. So yes, I know quite a few people on here. Good to see you all. So you probably all heard what we are attempting to do in Broxtowe, and we have done over the past 18 months, which is community organising, although the department was disbanded or is disbanding, but it's called community outreach. It's about getting involved in our communities to build up the trust and confidence in the brand of the Labour Party over years, not just months, building up to the election. It's not about pledges and promises in the future, it's showing people what we have done, and it's embedding ourselves in the communities, being a bit more outward facing rather than inward facing. I do like my internal meetings, and I do like our general committees. We do need to reach out to the voters, and within Broxtowe, we've done that quite well. We have a community high street hub, some of you may have seen, which is funded by the unions and their members. We haven't got an MP, there's no Labour clubs around nowadays, there's no MP's office. We've got our own high street community hub, which before the pandemic was an advice centre, signposting. We did food, coffee mornings, educational, help people with PPIs, and it was staffed by our members 5 days a week, 10:30 till 3, and that was a real big visible sign that Labour was here for them, and it meant we could outreach into the communities that needed us, and people could just pop in. You know, the elderly popped in because they were lonely, so on a Friday we'd have coffee with comrades or whatever, and they'd come in, and that was staffed. It was really good for our members, but it was also good to reach out to the community with anything that was needed. And then during the pandemic, we opened that up as a food hub, a food bank. We set up our own Broxdale Labour food bank, and at one point during last summer, we were delivering 300 parcels a week, open 6 days a week, always in a Labour bag, always phone up, and it was Broxdale Labour to answer the phone. So we did that, and that was in some of the most deprived areas of our CLP, and for some of our non-voters who said they didn't realise what the Labour Party did, or the Labour communities they called it, and we'd get their vote next time to make sure they'd vote for people, good people doing good things, as they said. So we did that for, it was about 8 months. We were only supposed to do it for 2 weeks, but the need was there, so we had to do the food parcels. We worked with the fire service, the co-op, you know, all the local businesses came to us with things, and it was real good. Labour brand was really high, and you know, we could allow us to go into places. The schools sent emails out to their families saying contact Broxdale Labour if you need food. We did stationery kits on the 1st of September. Our youth organised that, and we did a hot meal once a week throughout the summer, again organised and run by our young members. So it really was getting in the heart of the community. We've had to transfer that now to a charity, so I think we're one of the only Labour parties that have got our own charity, and that's under the name of Broxdale Community Projects, because we've had to help try and get funding. But that's in a separate building to our community. So we've also got our High Street hub. We've also got a separate building for that. And what we're also doing is we have highlighted in some of our key seats the key players in the community. And now we're working with Bomber, as he's called. He runs the local football clubs, and he wants to set up a community centre. And because of our knowledge in the summer, he's asked us to help him with that. We've linked him with HIMA, who's one of the biggest charities in Nottingham City, and we've linked them, and they've picked 5 community centres they want to build over the next year, and we're the link between both of them. And he's very, very grateful. And he took our advice, my advice, and the candidate Tyler's advice on whether he should join them. And that's a massive opportunity for them. And again, the most deprived area in the CLP. So it's about being part of the community, and looking to us, you know, for help and advice on that, and working with them, but making sure that we're not just doing it, we're helping them within the grassroots. That's who Bomber should be, the person running it. And now he's endorsed our candidate on their leaflet. So it's a real good collaboration. And I see Liz is on, and I just want to show you what we are doing within we do hyper local leaflets. These are our leaflets. We employed a local artist who's not part of the Labour Party, you know, has come from all the bubble that we are, and he's doing one of these for all our key seats. But this isn't just the county seat. We break the county seat down into 3 little wards. This is hyper local Labourhood news, and it's got a crossword, it's got recipe bags, so it's not in your face politics, but it's got the Labour brand. And we've got a little focus group that decide whether we should put solidarity, unity and community on our next one, and the vote was no, because solidarity means nothing to the public, but it does to us. It's our passion, we want it on there, but they said absolutely not, it's not Russia, so that'll be gone next time. We have to sell out some of our things, but hyper local. And we'll just show you some of our things. Liz, who's coming on, is talking about Labour neighbours. This, one of our members is on a WhatsApp group, on a street WhatsApp group, part of what has been set up during the COVID crisis. And she picked that the group was very hot on a hot topic about planning. There was a new planning permission. So we got on it quick, and we produced this leaflet within 48 hours. You can see again there, that's our candidate, and the issues about this expansion, the planning. And that was done on Vistaprint, and they turned it around in 48 hours. And this has gone to 60 houses. So that's hyper local. It's about getting things out, picking up an issue as quick as that, getting it out, getting your candidate's name, the solutions, the problem, and with photos. And we all did that, you know, within 5 days, because we can't knock on the doors. And we've had to do a whip round for stamps because we can't hand deliver them. That's what we're doing. We're doing hyper link, saying that we are linked with the community. Your community is our community. and building on that within Broxton. I think it works well. I'll tell you the success we're having. And we've got 2 councillors out of this 2019 in an area that had been poorly for 16 years. Yeah, people do see that Labour are doing that. We are. It is our Labour values in action. They see what we're doing, but they see us as good people first, and that we do happen just to be the Labour Party. And that's it. Any questions? Rambled on, didn't I?
You did, eh? You said, we only sorted out what we were actually talking about 10 minutes before we came on, because we're all just ridiculously busy. I'm just, yeah, it's been a rough one. If it's all right, Jenny, what I'll do is I'll pass through to the other speakers, because then we can come on the live on YouTube and we can have the questions then, and then you can ask what you want without having to worry about any details or anything. Not that there is, for anybody watching, ever anything to hide in talking on YouTube, but you know, but make everybody feel comfortable. Kevin, over to you if you want to talk about Labour Party graphic design, the importance of good design on leaflets, and a bit about Labour Organiser.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. I'm Kevin Ryan. I'm based in Sheffield and been in the party for sort of like the last 11 or so years now. I sort of have worked in marketing and graphic design by trade for the better part of the last decade. And about 2 years ago, I set up a network for creatives in the Labour Party. So people that work or people that have an interest in design, videography, illustration, etc. And mostly kind of out of like my own frustration that I felt like, you know, the left has a sort of like a rich history of kind of being the more creative side compared to the Tories. But I didn't know that many other designers in the party. And also because I think there was a worthwhile conversation that was worth opening up about the role of design within our movement. So we're going strong. Sort of a couple of years later, we put out quarterly art packs, which are kind of public calls where we'll put out a central theme. So we've done everything from supporting key workers to Black Lives Matter, the climate emergency, join a union was our most recent one. And in each of those, designers kind of respond to the brief with their own original poster design that's based on that kind of core theme. So our next one, which is on unemployment, will be dropping in a couple of weeks. And so in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, we've released 10 of these art packs now. We've got an online directory on our website, which is labourdesign.co.uk, of designers who come from the Labour movement. So if, as a candidate, you're ever looking for designers, that's quite a good resource to go to there, because it's people who will be, you know, morally invested in having the good outcome in your election. We do quite a lot of, I guess, we call it syllablacking, which is matchmaking between sort of candidates and designers. And we do this on both like a pro bono, so like a free basis, and a paid for basis, because we appreciate that, like, I mean, you know, first and foremost, we're people who want to put our time, energies, talents, and enthusiasm into kind of furthering the cause of Labour. And, you know, like we all have day jobs outside of this. So to me, if I'm donating a few hours of my time for sort of candidate design, that's the same as me going knocking out on doors, you know, but it's a little less cold this time of year. So, you know, some parties have budget for design, some parties don't. And, you know, we've got kind of solutions for candidates who, you know, of all means when it comes to that, really. So we've matched up hundreds of candidates, you know, sort of whether they've been PPCs or council candidates with designers over the last sort of like 18 months, 2 years. So if any of you do have any kind of needs when it comes to that, feel free to kind of get in touch with those details that I can throw into the chat box here. We're working on sort of a new project at the moment, which is a bit of a design resource. I know it's something that a lot of kind of local parties have a bit of a frustration with, is, you know, what should a leaflet look like? So pulling together like a bit of a visual archive of some best practice when it comes to those, so it can stand as a bit of visual inspiration for them. And then we do quite a lot of work with, you know, sort of like various campaigns, unions, sort of even the Australian Labour Party. We've done a little bit of collaboration with. And then we've got a bit of a charitable arm as well. So I don't know if anyone did buy a copy of the Labour Movement Calendar 2021, but that was an LPGD initiative which we sort of started selling around November of last year. Each of the, instead of saying Valentine's Day or what have you, each of the dates were sort of important key moments from Labour history with either an original or a vintage Labour design at the top of the page, and on the back was a full colour print of each one. And through that, we raised about £8,000 for the Trussell Trust to help kind of feed people over Christmas, since the government won't. And we're kind of looking about how we can kind of leverage that and support some more kind of good causes and fundraising for parts of the party that might need it. So yeah, I guess the kind of key points to really pull out, if I was going to kind of give advice about when you're designing your leaflets, is to probably immediately scale back everything that you've already written down on a piece of paper. One of the things that we see quite often is people trying to put the Lord's Prayer on the back of a postage stamp. Like routinely, I'm given 2+ pages of A4, which through some alchemy, I can make fit on 2 pages of A5. It's simple physics says that's not too possible. But the 3 main things that your leaflets or any communications needs to do: it needs to attract the attention of whoever's reading it. It needs to convey your key message, or maximum of 3 messages, and it needs to underpin sort of the integrity of the party itself. And I think it's very easy to get lost in a sense of we need to say everything here, but there's definitely kind of a minimalism to be embraced. And the other thing, I think, what Jane's doing in Broxdale is absolutely brilliant, because something that we see all too often is sort of put candidate leaflets which look like candidate leaflets. It comes through the door, and it goes straight from the door to the bin. Whereas if you can kind of inject a little bit of novelty into it, and even if you're saying the same things which you've been saying forever, which we are, because since sort of the early 1900s we've been advocating for the cause of human dignity. If you can portray that in a way which still somehow kind of looks like novel and unique, and I think the hyperlocalization is just such a brilliant and genius way of doing that. So I'd really encourage you to explore any of those avenues. And like I say, if you have young creatives or young people, or anyone, actually, forget about young people. If you have anyone in your local parties who has an interest in design, I definitely kind of recommend encouraging them into that. We've got quite a big focus over the next year of how we can help more people in the movement become designers, because we appreciate that it's something which isn't necessarily accessible for everyone. And if you're completely stuck, just get in touch with us. And then I guess sort of my last little bit to wrap up on is out of the back of the Labour Together report that was published sort of into the 2019 election, and through some of the work that we've been doing in Labour Party graphic designers, and some of the other kind of excellent work that Campaign Lab, led Beyond Cities, and other groups have done, which really kind of makes the most of sort of the skills of our membership. We've set up, re-established Labour Organiser. So the original, the only journal committed to the organisation and business matters of the party. But we're now using that as a platform to kind of share best practices, innovation, and we're talking about kind of the practice of all of these things here. I guess you could say organisers kind of the theory. So we've got features on branding candidates, on storytelling. We've got a new one which is going up in the next couple of days on how to take a good photograph for your candidate for election materials. So that's definitely, I'll pop a link to that in the chat as well. And that's us.
Cheers, thanks, Kevin. And yeah, importantly, although this is the one you should have promoted on Labour Organiser, there's an article that tells you how to brief a graphic designer and not do that 2 sides of A4 onto an A5 slip. So next speaker and last one, and then we'll open it up to questions. I know people are itching to get in. Liz, welcome. So Liz Pohl is a campaigner and Labour Party activist in the Southwest. Liz, do you want to talk about your great work with Labour Neighbours and your work about focusing on parish councils and how you've kind of given a foothold into you know, traditionally difficult rural communities for Labour to get a hold into, and how you've gone about that? You can first off come off mute though, Liz. That can be the first thing that you might have to do.
Can I share my PDF? Sorry. Can anybody give
Yeah, let
a-
me enable screen sharing. One sec. You should be able to hopefully share now.
Yes, okay, so let me, yes, so Labour Neighbours, so we're a big rural constituency. We haven't got any, well, when we thought we didn't have any councillors, we perhaps knew we had 2 or 3 town councillors, but actually, as it turns out, we've got, I don't know, about 20 parish and town councillors. When we went through the register of interests, we found them in all our, I think we've got 65 villages or something, and 65 parishes and about 130 villages in our constituency. So a couple of things happened after 2015. I think we had about 80 members in 2014, and we went up to about 750 members by 2016. And so obviously that capacity, that sort of that's a big capacity increase. But we didn't have any structure, so we had all the campaigning we had done for the last 30 years in living memory had taken place really in Honiton and Tiverton. But we do have a couple of other small towns, Axminster and Seaton, which are about 7,000 each. And I live, well, near Axminster, and we ended up sort of deciding that we were going to do something. So we started meeting in the pub every once a month. On the first Monday of the month we would meet, and sometimes it would be 15 of us if something exciting was happened, like some master planning. Sometimes it would just be a couple of us, but we carried that on up until the beginning of the pandemic, and we got organised, and we did lots of, well, what we thought was lots of things. We just sort of did it ourselves without any help really. We printed up, we took a national leaflet, you can see it in the top right hand corner, and we just kind of replicated it and stuck some photos of local things on the front side of it. And that was, then we went out and leafleted it between elections, because we kept being told when we turned up with leaflets that we never showed up other than at elections. And then when there were vacancies with people leaving the town council, we talked about it at our Monday meeting, and we put people forward, and it turned out there was nobody else put themselves forward, so they got co-opted, and we went from having 2 councillors to having 7 on the Axminster Town Council. We've now got more members than any other party on Axminster. And we've just created a bit of a structure. So now we've gone from having sort of 2 places where we've got a little bit of things going on, maybe 3 or 4 street stalls a year and a leaflet during elections, to having 3 places with things going on. But we've got 24 wards. So we are now wondering what to do with all these members, you know, who are in these other wards where all they can do is shout at the TV and read The Guardian. So what we decided to do was try and go to them. So we thought, so like, okay, well, and the next thing that happened was that we got Insight. So we got the Labour Party software Insight, which is an absolute sort of cornucopia and of delights and amazing things, and it sort of pops up and tells you where you've got sort of high, low and medium Labour Party interest, and you've got like all kinds of, it ranks everybody and tells you where to go and what time of day to knock on the door and whether you go in the evening or the weekend and things. So that all seemed really exciting, but we just had nothing going on in the 24 wards. So we tried asking people if there anybody random out there who wants to do something, and maybe a couple of people popped up, and we went out to, well, in fact, what happened was that Insight told us that the top place in our constituency to go was up in, like, near Hemyock. It was like in absolutely the middle of nowhere, up in where the CH is in the branch, in the top right hand corner. There's nothing there except for a cow and a pothole. And we went up there, and we found out that when we knocked on the doors there, we got as much Labour ID as we did in the council estates at the edges of Honiton and Tiverton and Axminster. So, and in fact, when we thought about it, we thought, well, perhaps actually there's more opportunity for the Labour Party in those areas, because they were literally untouched. They were not only untouched by Labour, like we had never ever said our name, the word Labour had never been spoken other than about sort of farm labouring in those areas. But what's more, when we went and talked to people, like literally no politician from any party had turned up. They'd been living there for 50 years and they'd never seen anybody. And we were the first, and they were very impressed by this. And so it seemed to us that these were actually sort of areas that perhaps if we gave some attention might end up giving us more Labour ID than other areas where we had been knocking on doors. Well, we hadn't been knocking on doors, that's a bit of a stretch, but we have been putting a leaflet out occasionally. So that seemed interesting. And another thing that was important was that, like, so I think we were getting about 20% Labour, but we were also only getting 20% Conservative. We were getting about 10% non-voter, and then we were getting 50% don't knows. And from the conversations I've had, they did genuinely seem like don't knows. You know, they were sort of, you know, really did seem to sort of be weighing up the issues. So that sort of got us started. So then we started mapping our members and seeing where our members were and where they were sort of clustered. It turns out that we've got these 24 wards, we've got about 30 members in every ward. They're not necessarily, you know, I mean, some wards are obviously bigger geographically, but they're not clustered in the towns. There actually are 30 members in my ward equally as there are in a ward in Tiverton. In fact, we've got one ward in Tiverton where there are only 12 members. So that seemed interesting. And then we tried to get people to come out, you know, and build capacity by, you know, come to our meetings, come to a street stall, come and do some leafleting with us in our sort of areas that we normally go, and they didn't want to. So I just woke up one morning and thought, well, let's just go out to there. Let's get that. We can't sort of instruct them. We can't be in 24 places because there were only about 10 or 15, well, let's say 5 of us who were doing anything in the constituency. So we thought, well, why don't we just try and get them to help themselves? So what we did was we created something called Labour Neighbours. And we started, like, I think the concept originally was to go ward by ward. And I thought, well, if I do 2 a month, then I'll be able to finish within a year, or maybe if that's too ambitious, I'll be able to get through every ward in 2 years. And I'm going to go from, I'm going to call up every member in that ward, 30 phone calls. So maybe that would take, I don't know, you know, 4 days, you know, a quick, maybe a more, you know, maybe a 10-minute phone call. And then have a conversation about them with, you know, would you, so the first concept was, would you, in order to set them up as their own standalone grassrootsy area, we had to put them in touch with each other. And obviously that we all know we can't do that. We can't share people's contact details from member centre. We can't even see their details in Organise in order to tell anybody else what it was. So we phoned them up, and, well, in fact, I had a conversation with legal and governance, and I spoke to somebody and I said, what if I wanted to put 2 people or 10 people or 30 people in touch with each other? Could we do that? And they said that would be, as long as I had a verbal opt-in, that was up to them who we put them in touch with. So we started gathering those people's contact details. We had a GDPR statement, and we put them on a spreadsheet, and then we would just, if there was what I found was about 60% of people that I spoke to wanted to opt in. No, sorry, about 80% of people that I spoke to wanted to opt in, and I got through to about 80% of the people I tried to call. So we ended up with about, out of 30, you'd have like sort of about 20 people that wanted to be part of Labour Neighbours. And then we just email all 30 members, these 20 people would like to be contacted by you. And I think the hope at that point was that they were all going to madly start calling each other up and inviting each other around for coffee. And that didn't happen exactly like that. It happened in some places. People started talking to each other, and people started contacting me and saying, this is amazing. Literally, my next door neighbour is a Labour Party member and I've never spoken to them before. Or, you know, I've been seeing this person for 30 years and walking the dogs, and I had no idea that they were a socialist. So it did begin to have some impact. So this, in January, we were going with a model where then we would try and do what I call, where we would try and, so this is, sorry, let me move along. So we'd have a phone call with people and ask people how they, you know, how they were doing and would they like to be in the contact list. And most people would say yes. And so then we would send out our contact list, and then we would invite people to come and meet and have a glass of wine, and a large percentage of the these people would come because these things were happening in their own ward. So in a ward for us can be 3 parishes and maybe 5 villages, but they were interested enough. You know, usually there's a sort of dominant one and they would come along. So they would come along and have this and have a glass of wine and then talk about what was important in the village. So you're beginning then, I guess, on the one hand, to build a knowledge base. So they're beginning to say to us, well, what's important? And they'll be like, well, speeding is important. You know, there's factory farming and we're worried about the welfare of the chickens, or, you know, there's a biodigester and a lot of traffic, you know, whatever it was. These are rural issues. And so we began to write all those down, prioritize them and talk to people about what they wanted to actually campaign on. So the 2 outputs of this meeting were, you know, what we want to do, one thing by and as the Labour Party, you know, say our name, come out and speak our name in this area where it's never been said before, even if it's just to publicise a litter pick on the local parish Facebook group, or to be a quiz team at the pub or whatever it is. And the other thing is to arrange, you know, a next meeting or a frequency of meetings, you know, at which, you know, you want to meet each other going forward. And then, you know, we would talk to each person. So at this point, when this is all happening, this is quite a labour intensive process, because I was at that point interviewing everybody and asking them, and the way I like to frame it with people was, if we were going to be putting out a leaflet in your neighbourhood tomorrow, what would be the stories that we would feature? So that's the right-hand panel, which in fact I think I would start with in a conversation now. And then my second question would be, if we were going to put out a campaign video in your neighbourhood tomorrow, what would be the people we would want to be seen chatting with, the organisations we'd want to feature, the landmarks we would want to have seen, and yeah, just places, issues that we would want to illustrate. And people could really relate to that and started giving us a lot of information. So on the right-hand panel, you can see you're beginning to sort of build up a database. And at the moment, we're now going through a process of trying to work out how to display that perhaps on a website so that people can access it, or in a way that is accessible for them to view and add to, and make a sort of knowledge base that they can own as their group, and build on and have a sort of come back to every 6 months or something, and refresh and come back for. So obviously COVID then struck. So rather than going through this process with each village, I decided that in March I was just going to call every member in the constituency. And so I'd spend half an hour every day, and I called about 600 members. And I got through that in about 4 months. So it was more or less sort of the whole of lockdown. I was making about 30 minutes of phone calls a day. And that was great, because now I have a Labour Neighbours opt-in list in every ward, and at least everybody's got the capacity to call somebody in their ward. And if they want to sell off the village hall or pave over the cricket pitch or whatever, they've got someone they can call to discuss it with. So I don't know if I'm out of time, but I think what we're trying to do with this process is to move people from, this is something that they used in the Obama campaign, and you're trying to move people from the outer circle where they're the community. So you could think of that as maybe the community outside the Labour Party. So these are just the voters. And then you're trying to, you've also then got like your community leaders, you've got your grass tops who are your post office owners and your church people and your brownie leaders and whoever. And you've got them. So you're trying to move people, encourage people in the community with community sort of organising, I suppose, to come into the crowd of people who are actually doing something for the community. And then from there, you're trying to move them into the CLP. Within the CLP, you're trying to move people to having some commitment to do some deliveries of letters or write letters. I found people quite willing to write things, write press releases, do a little bit of research or a bit of data entry on marked register or something like that. And then the more you do that, the more you get people into the call. So that's sort of one concept I wanted to talk about. And another concept was that it takes, you can't go from just having somebody doing nothing for the Labour Party to being active. So you have to sort of move people. And what I find as a person who's got my own business, you have to offer people things before you can ask them for something. So in our case, we're offering them the chance to be in a network with each other where they weren't before. We're offering them a chance to meet up once COVID is out of the question, and also a chance to share what they think about their neighbourhood and what's important. And then once you've got them that engaged, then you have a chance then to ask them to come on, let's do something about this, and just gradually ask them to do something a little bit bigger every time. So I think now we've got the rally point of the election, I'm actually going to try and push things a little bit faster. So rather than having the quite laborious, but I think if you just put one person on calling people for a year, you'll have got through your whole constituency easily and got them onto these lists and then got them into the Labour Neighbours structure. But now we've got the rally point of the election, I think I'm going to sort of push out, and especially with the lockdown, we're not able to go out and get the photos of sort of, GP surgeries and potholes and, whatever, flooding and whatever it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out a Google form and ask people to fill in that document I showed you here about their local on the Google form. And the key thing I'm going to ask them for at this point is to upload their photos. So, okay, so you want a cycle path from Willand to Ufcombe, or there's a dangerous bend where people, crash or whatever, go and take a photo for me and upload it to a Google Drive. And then we can use that in our campaigns, everywhere, very easily. Just a candidate can just stick it in the parish and say, look, this is a picture of the dangerous bend. Don't you think we should do something about that? Vote Labour. Another thing that we're doing, which may be a bit horrifying to people who are actually on a Labour group or in power in their council, is that we're using the public question time at council meetings. So we're showing up. I'm going to parish council. I've got a rural ward, a rural district I'm standing in. We've got 26 wards, and I've got my goal, and that basically is my campaign, because it's not one of our target divisions, is to turn up and attend a parish council meeting in every parish between now and May. But we're also turning up at the county council and the district council where we've got Tory administrations, and we're asking questions. And it turns out that, a 3-minute speech is about the same length as a press release. So basically what we're doing is we write a press release, and then we turn up in question time. We trawl through the agendas, reports pack, make sure that we're asking a question on topic that's going to be there. and we write a press release, go and read it out more or less, and maybe tweak it a bit to be a question. And then we leave the chamber before anybody else has even started discussing the topic, and we post it on, the community Facebook group as our position on a topic that hasn't yet been debated in the chamber, so that we've broken the news and put a Labour Party position on it, and we've got a photograph of a Labour Party person speaking in the place of power where the decision is going to be made. So I think with that, I find that we have to focus on hyperlocal questions. So it's no good just going and saying, we're concerned about car park charge rises. You have to go in and you have to say, we're concerned about car park charges going up in Honiton Lace Walk, because it's going to be a big problem for that community. And then when you break that story into Honiton, everybody loves you. Whereas if you go in and say, we're just worried about car park charges, they'll say, take politics and get off our group. This is supposed to be for sort of, lost dogs and things. So I think I've probably gone over time, but plan it, gridding, what you do, getting organised is very important. Targeting our campaigns, we're definitely, the capacity that we're building in our rural wards, the idea is that we're building it in order to bring people through those circles of commitment so that we can bring their power into our target wards, because you have to win somewhere rather than lose a little bit worse everywhere. Social media, I've got social media adverts going in Tiverton at the moment, introducing our candidate. Local background, he is, it's costing us about, I don't know, £5 for 1,000 impressions or something. It's cheap as chips. And campaign technology, like I said, it's good. Some of it's a little bit clunky, but it's actually, I'm a software business owner, and it's functional. Actually, if you get into it, you can use it and you can get something to work. And so one of the other reasons for doing rural campaigning is a lot of our constituencies have got rural hinterlands. And if we had been campaigning in the rural areas of places like Bolsover, we wouldn't have lost them. So we need to do Labour neighbours, pick, especially with the boundary review, we're going to need that. Sorry, I've lost track of my timing. I think I spoke for longer than I should.
I don't think anybody's going to complain, Liz. Honestly, it's just super impressive and incredible to see.
Oh yeah, and yeah, parish councillors. So find out who they are and involve them and put them in touch with each other.
Real. Thank you, Liz. That's just. Yeah, I was just saying on a chat, I was like, every time I see you do a presentation like that, I just basically shrug my shoulders and just go, oh, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing. I've made a career out of campaigning and I just feel massively inadequate because it's just such organisation to such a zenith degree on every single task. But it just shows what can be accomplished when you take that methodology and just rigorously apply it through every step, and how that can filter out and develop such activism. Right. The more important bit for us is definitely with this next session, which is over to you, really. Hannah, do we want to stop live streaming? I had a quick check. Last time I checked, there was 0 people watching. So all of what we've said is perfectly safe. It's not got